It Was Never You, Recognizing the Narcissistic System. Welcome back. I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and this is the Escape series, where we dismantle the psychological prison built by narcissistic families and rebuild from the truth. Let's begin with the most liberating sentence you may ever hear. It was never you. The guilt, the rejection, the constant walking on eggshells. The lifelong ache of wondering what's wrong with you when you were never the issue to begin with. You were the mirror. And narcissistic systems hate mirrors. You reflected the truth, and in a family built on lies, truth is dangerous. That's why you were punished. This first video is your initiation into clarity. We're not talking about bad parenting in general or occasional dysfunction. We're talking about organized chaos, a psychological structure designed to maintain power, avoid accountability, and break the spirit of anyone who sees too clearly. This isn't about one bad apple. It's about a system, a narcissistic ecosystem with roles, rules, and rituals meant to keep you locked in self-doubt and lifelong loyalty to your own oppressor. What makes a family narcissistic? Narcissism, when we speak of it here, is not just an individual trait. In these family systems, it's a structure, a hierarchy centered around one or both parents who demand loyalty, control, and emotional servitude. Everything revolves around them. Their image, their needs, their moods. The entire family dynamic exists to preserve their ego. That's why truth is forbidden. That's why your feelings were inconvenient. That's why your confidence had to be crushed. In a narcissistic family, there is no room for autonomy. Children don't get to discover who they are. They get assigned roles, scripts, identities that serve the narcissist's need for control. You may have been labeled the golden child, the scapegoat, the quiet one, the rebel, but make no mistake, these roles were never about who you were. They were about who the system needed you to be to survive. The emotional economy of control in narcissistic families is subtle. It's emotional, psychological, energetic. These families have their own economy, a warped value system. The currency is shame. The contract is silence. The prize is conditional approval. And the cost? Your identity. You learn early that love is earned, not by being yourself, but by making yourself smaller, more obedient, more convenient. You're rewarded for loyalty, not truth. You're punished for clarity, not disrespect. You may hear things like, don't be dramatic, or stop overreacting, or you're so sensitive, all code for, stop seeing clearly. Your ability to name reality becomes the enemy. So you learn to suppress your gut, numb your voice, doubt your instincts. That's how they keep you in line. Casting the roles. Scapegoat, golden child, and more. In a narcissistic system, children are cast like actors in a stage play. The golden child is chosen to reflect the narcissist's false perfection. They are praised when they mimic, align, and validate the parent's narrative. The scapegoat, on the other hand, is blamed for everything. They carry the sins of the family. Their role is to absorb the shame the narcissist refuses to feel. They are punished for their insight, for their refusal to pretend. Then there are the flying monkeys, the siblings or relatives who defend the narcissist, parrot their views, or enforce their punishment, and the enabler, often the other parent who keeps the system alive through silence, fear, or denial. It's all one big psychic theater, with everyone playing a part. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. Once you recognize the script, you can walk off the stage. Thought control, guilt, and trauma bonding. In these families, control doesn't always come from screaming or overt violence. It comes from covert manipulation psychological tactics, so subtle you barely realize what's happening. Guilt becomes a leash. You're made to feel responsible for the parent's emotions. If they're unhappy, it's your fault. If they're angry, it's your attitude. If they're tired, it's because of how difficult you are. This is gaslighting 101, the complete inversion of truth. And then there's trauma bonding, the cycle of abuse, followed by love bombing. One day you're shamed, the next you're praised. This intermittent reward system scrambles your nervous system and wires your brain to chase approval instead of safety. You become addicted to crumbs. You mistake chaos for connection. That's not love, that's conditioning. The spiritual component. Why you were targeted. Here's what most therapists won't tell you. These dynamics are not just psychological, they are spiritual. You weren't scapegoated because you were broken. You were scapegoated because you were clear. Because you had light. Because you were the one most likely to awaken. And awakening is dangerous to systems built on illusion. You threatened their control simply by seeing too much. Your presence disrupted the pattern. That's why they tried to crush you. Not because you were weak, but because you were powerful. They saw your strength before you did. And they built an entire system to convince you it didn't exist. The moment you wake up, you're already free. Here's the paradox. The moment you see the system, you're no longer in it. Not mentally, not spiritually. Because systems like these only work when you're unconscious, when you believe the roles, the labels, the lies. But once you name the pattern, you've already stepped outside of it. You become the observer, not the pawn. That is where your freedom begins. You start to recognize the emotional manipulation, the guilt traps, the fake apologies, the double standards, and you stop playing. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to earn love that should have been yours unconditionally. You stop trying to fix what you didn't break. What happens when you stop playing your role? The moment you stop playing your assigned role, the system panics. The narcissist may escalate. The enablers may guilt you. The flying monkeys may attack. Why? Because your refusal to play exposes the dysfunction. You've become the threat not because you're wrong, but because you're right. Because your healing is a mirror. Your clarity is a revolution. And your absence from the role you once played reveals the whole structure is artificial. But this panic is proof that you're on the right path. It's confirmation that you were holding up more than just your own pain. You were holding up the illusion they needed to survive. And now, you've dropped the curtain. What real love feels like. One of the hardest parts of escaping the narcissistic system is realizing you've never felt real love, only conditional approval dressed up as care. Real love is not based on performance. It doesn't require silence. It doesn't demand you shrink. It's safe. It's consistent. It celebrates your voice, your boundaries, your truth. When you begin to experience that, even if only in friendships or mentors or partners, it will expose the starvation you lived with your whole life. And let me be clear, you deserve real love. You are always worthy of it. Their inability to give it wasn't your failure. It was their limitation. The path forward: reclaiming identity. The next step in escaping the narcissistic system is reclamation. Reclaiming your story, your identity, your voice. You begin to write your own script. You realize you're not the angry one, you're the honest one. You're not the difficult one, you're the boundary setter. You're not the black sheep, you're the seer, the protector, the truth bringer. You reconnect with parts of yourself you had to hide. You begin to trust your intuition again. You stop second guessing. You start saying no. And eventually, you reach a moment where you feel peace in your body. Not fear, not guilt, just peace. That's when you know you're out. Call to action: your power starts now. Here's your call to action. Refuse to play the role. Refuse to carry shame that was never yours. Refuse to edit yourself to make broken people comfortable. This isn't just psychological survival. This is soul liberation. Because the moment you saw the system for what it is, you weren't inside it anymore. You became the observer. And observers become architects. You don't just escape. You build a new structure, a new lineage, a new story, one rooted in truth, clarity, and sovereignty. You are not their pawn. You are not their shame bearer. You are not broken. You are free. Hi, I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and what you just watched is part of my signature program, the Chosen One series inside School of Soul. This series is not just a course, it's a blueprint for those who know they were different from the start: the black sheep, the scapegoat, the truth teller, the cycle breaker. Inside, you'll discover the family roles playbook, the golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the lost child, and how to finally step out of the part you were cast in without consent. How the black sheep becomes the goat, turning rejection into radical transformation and leadership. How to break generational curses and rewrite ancestral contracts so the pain stops with you. And how to recognize and escape modern forms of spiritual and technological targeting, from gang stalking to synthetic synchronicity. This isn't just about survival. It's about awakening, about reclaiming your voice, your lineage, and your destiny as one of the chosen ones. Click the link below to access the full series now, because the role ends the moment you decide it does, and the real script begins with you.